Kash Patel stepped onto the set of Morning Horizon not with hesitation, but with the composed assurance of a man long familiar with chaos. Once a national security strategist, architect of the Nunez memo that once rattled the political foundations of Capitol Hill, and now serving as director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Patel had become more than a name. He was a lightning rod. For his followers, he was the fearless hand pulling back the curtain on entrenched power. To his detractors, he represented a looming disruption, calculated, relentless, and poised to dismantle the status quo. That morning, Morning Horizon wasn't merely a broadcast. It was an intricately designed battleground. In the production booth, a voice whispered, "Let him show his hand." On stage, the hosts assumed their roles like veteran duelists. Jessica Alpha, serene yet cutting. Karen Wilna, her grin edged with intent. Sarah Davin, coiled with intensity, ready to land a decisive strike. Tension saturated the air. The crowd did not applaud, they watched, unsure whether they were about to witness an interview or a broadcasted ambush. Then he arrived, wearing a deep navy suit, a modest tie, nothing flashy. Patel walked on stage like a barrister stepping into a courtroom where he already knew the verdict. He offered a polite nod to the audience, his eyes scanning the rows with unnerving composure. A few tentative claps broke the silence, interwoven with low murmurs of skepticism. "Trump's ally," muttered at the host's table. Lila smirked. Amelia didn't bother concealing her fatigue. They believed the stage was theirs, that the snare had been set. But within minutes, a single, quietly delivered sentence from Patel would unweave their strategy. Not through anger, but a serenity sharp enough to chill. For the first time in recent memory, Morning Horizon lost command of its own script, right on the platform they had believed was theirs alone. Before we dive deeper, tell us where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to subscribe to stay updated with our newest stories. Amelia, in a voice warm yet edged with steel, welcomed the audience. "Good morning, and welcome to Morning Horizon. Today's conversation is one you won't want to miss. Please join us in welcoming our guest, FBI Director, former National Security Advisor, and author of Government Gangsters, Mr. Kash Patel." "Thank you for being with us, Kash." Applause followed, measured, reserved. Within that sound lay uncertainty, the rustle of scrutiny, sideways glances. Not everyone was here to be convinced. Patel gave a subtle nod, a slight smile brushing his lips, though his eyes remained sharply attentive. His response was firm, his tone even, "Thank you for the invitation. I'm here for an honest discussion." Just a moment, but the atmosphere paused. Not because of what he said, but the way he said it. No genuflection, no polite mask. Patel wasn't there as a guest. He was a man who'd already memorized the score, and was prepared to improvise the next act. Amelia pressed forward, her tone shifting to gravitas. "Kash, you've ignited controversy by suggesting that journalists who spread what you call electoral misinformation should face prosecution. Do you really believe trials are the answer, or is this an effort to muzzle opposing voices?" The question struck like the first arrow. The audience leaned in, hushed. Patel didn't flinch. He tilted forward slightly, gaze unwavering. Prosecution isn't about silencing. It's about safeguarding the truth. When a media outlet knowingly disseminates falsehoods, eroding faith in the democratic process or steering public opinion through deception, that stops being journalism. It becomes harm. My responsibility is to uphold the law, irrespective of identity. Sarah Davin, herself an attorney, interjected quickly, her voice brisk. "But Mr. Patel, who becomes the arbiter of truth, you as FBI director? That veers dangerously close to censoring the press. The First Amendment doesn't make room for that." Patel nodded, no retreat. "I fully support the First Amendment, but it does not provide sanctuary for deliberate fraud. If an outlet fabricates evidence to destroy reputations or sow discord, that's not protected speech. That's criminal conduct. What I'm addressing are violations of law, not differing viewpoints." The audience shifted, some hands clapping, others remaining crossed. Karen Wilna, unable to restrain herself, leaned in with a crooked grin. You talk about justice, but it sounds like you want the FBI to play news police, throwing anyone critical of the administration behind bars. That doesn't sound like liberty. Patel turned to her, gaze cool and precise. Miss Monroe, critics are vital to democracy. I welcome critique. But when media platforms use their influence to invent, distort, or corrupt the integrity of elections, they are no longer engaging in journalism. They're committing an offense. Justice doesn't favor, and neither do I. The murmurs grew louder, heads nodding, others shaking in silent dissent. Then Ana Rivera, her tone laced with challenge, spoke. You sound measured, but how can we trust your neutrality? You're Trump's man. You helped shape Truth Social. Won't your bureau go after anti-Trump outlets first? Patel offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile, not out of politeness, but control. Miss Rivera, the FBI belongs to no individual. Each case will be driven by facts, weighed by law, and subject to judicial scrutiny. I hold no blacklist, only the Constitution. Alyssa Farah Griffin, drawing on her experience within the former Trump administration, leaned in, her voice composed, yet edged with urgency. Cash, I understand your call for responsibility, but the phrase prosecuting journalists sends a chill down people's spines. Don't you think your language is eroding public faith in the FBI? Patel turned toward Alyssa, his tone quiet but magnetic. I recognize that concern, and provoking fear isn't my aim. But faith in the Bureau doesn't come from sidestepping uncomfortable truths. When the press faces accusations of distortion or manipulation, we can't turn away. Investigative journalism, the real pursuit of fact, is a national treasure. But those who exploit that platform to mislead are abusing something sacred. Suddenly, the studio echoed with applause, louder than expected, catching even the crew off guard. The camera instinctively swept across the audience, though the director quickly signaled to hold back on a close-up. Sarah Davin, perceptive as ever, seized the moment. You speak of truth, but you've previously endorsed theories like Italy Gate. Why should the public see you as a steward of truth, not a partisan figure? Patel didn't flinch. Miss Torres, I'm not here to relitigate past allegations. I'm here to talk about transparency and enforcement. If there's substantiated proof that a media outlet has crossed legal lines, I'll pursue it. If there's none, I won't. The principle is simple. No bias, just law. Applause surged again, this time deeper, more resonant, unyielding. From the back of the studio, a few audience members rose to their feet. One called out, "Keep going, Cash." Karen Wilna hesitated, rustling the pages on her lap, her gaze flickering nervously between her co-hosts and the increasingly energized crowd. Beside her, Jessica Alpha leaned forward slightly, as if poised to retake the reins of the segment. But the roar of the room, the clapping and shouted encouragement, made it plain. The audience's gravity was pulling toward Cash Patel. Patel didn't move to capitalize on the moment. He simply remained still, centered, as if seated in the quiet of his own office. His hands rested lightly on the chair's arms, and his eyes drifted from one host to another with the stillness of a chess master, watching and waiting for a single flawed move. The hosts leaned in toward each other, their murmured exchanges no longer tinged with confidence. They had anticipated Patel would falter on the issue of prosecuting the press. Instead, he had tilted the axis of the room in his direction. Alyssa Farah Griffin, the lone host with first-hand experience in the Trump administration, broke the silence. She didn't soften her words. Her voice was clear, precise, and controlled. Cash, you served closely under President Trump, authored the Nunes memo, and played a role in launching Truth Social. How can the public trust that you'll lead the FBI independently and not simply advance Trump's agenda? The question landed like a finely aimed arrow, targeting Patel's loyalty. The audience held its breath. Patel leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady, voice calm but resolute. Miss Griffin, I've never hidden my connection to President Trump, but the Bureau isn't a pawn of any leader, including him. My obligation is to national security and the American people, not to a figurehead or a faction. Karen Wilna, quick to jump in, cut across the silence with a voice thick with sarcasm. Oh, come on. You wrote a children's book where Trump is crowned King Donald. That's not patriotism. It's propaganda. And now you want us to believe you're impartial. Patel's smile was restrained, not conciliatory. More like someone prepared for the jab. Miss Monroe, that book was whimsical fiction, not a policy declaration. But if we're discussing allegiance, I pledge mine to the Constitution. I worked with Trump because I shared his goals. Defending American interests, rooting out corruption. That doesn't mean I lack independence. The audience shifted once more. Some clapping in agreement, others visibly unconvinced. Lisa Gilsa pressed forward, tone crisp with skepticism. But Mr. Patel, you advised Trump Media, a company dedicated to amplifying his voice. How do we know your FBI won't just become an arm of Truth Social, punishing the opposition? Patel didn't blink. Miss Rivera, my career path doesn't determine the Bureau's course. I stepped away from Trump Media to devote myself to national security. The Bureau acts on law and facts, not hashtags or headlines. If a political figure, any figure, breaks the law, they'll be held accountable. Party affiliation is irrelevant. A surge of applause broke out, stronger now, a current rising from the back of the room. More audience members stood. The atmosphere was no longer neutral. Sarah Davin leaned forward, voice edged with challenge. You speak with poise, but you once called senior FBI officials gangsters for pursuing Trump. That's not defending justice, it's shielding one man. Will you retract those words? Patel's voice remained calm, deliberate. Ms. Torres, I stand by what I said. When those entrusted with power weaponize it to pursue a political target without solid evidence, that's misconduct. I'm not defending Trump as a person, I'm defending the principle that every citizen deserves fair treatment regardless of name or office. The applause swelled, cheers now rising from a corner of the audience. The camera swept across the room, capturing nods and affirming glances. Jessica Alpha, sensing the room slipping beyond the host's command, stepped in. Cash, fairness is one thing. But don't you think your close alignment with Trump raises doubts about your motives? How do you expect critics to believe your FBI will be truly neutral? Patel didn't hesitate. Miss Grant, I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to do what's right. Neutrality doesn't mean silence, it means putting the law above every name and narrative. In any investigation, I won't see a friend or foe, I'll see facts. Another wave of applause burst out, longer this time. A voice rang out from the seats, that's what we need. Lila, visibly irritated now, interjected. But you've called Trump's opponents the deep state. That doesn't unify the country, it splits it further. Patel turned toward her, expression steady. Miss Monroe, the deep state refers to anyone on any side who manipulates institutions for personal or political gain. I don't divide the country. I call for accountability. Unity doesn't mean agreement, it means a shared respect for the truth even when it's inconvenient. Ana Rivera, determined not to let Patel steer the conversation unchallenged, fired off a pointed question. So you would investigate Trump if he were suspected of breaking the law, or just those who stand against him? Patel responded instantly. Miss Rivera, if there's credible evidence, anyone, from a president to a private citizen, will be investigated. No one is above the law. He sat motionless, eyes clear, posture calm, as if every move had been mapped in advance. The hosts conferred in tense whispers, Joy tapping the desk with frustration, Marissa shaking her head. They had hoped to corner Patel with questions of loyalty. But instead, he had transformed the accusation into a shield and the audience had followed. But Ana wasn't finished. She shifted tactics swiftly, voice sharp with accusation. Mr. Patel, you've signed books with the slogan WWGE1WGA, which is directly tied to QAnon. You've appeared at the Reawaken America tour, an event steeped in conspiracy rhetoric. How can the American people trust an FBI director associated with extremist groups? Patel didn't flinch. His reply was clear, measured. Miss Rivera, I don't control the meanings others assign. That phrase was something I autographed at a reader's request, not a statement of ideology. I attend a wide range of events, left, right, center, not to endorse, but to listen. That's how a leader understands the concerns of the public. My role at the Bureau is grounded in fact, not fiction. Anna's expression hardened. You can't play innocent, Cash. QAnon has been deemed a domestic threat by the very Bureau you lead. By participating in these spaces, signing those slogans, you legitimize dangerous movements. Do you deny that? Patel drew a slow breath, his voice unwavering. Miss Rivera, I don't empower any group, extreme or otherwise. As a lawyer, I know dialogue is essential even with those I disagree with. Ignoring people doesn't silence them, it isolates them. I attend those events to understand what fuels people's beliefs. And let me be clear, if QAnon or any movement crosses the line into criminal activity, my FBI will investigate. No exceptions. Sarah Davin cut in, her tone sharp as glass. You keep emphasizing facts, but you once lent credence to Italygate, a wild conspiracy about foreign interference in the 2020 election. As director of the FBI, how do you justify association with theories your own agency has since debunked? Patel met her gaze, calm and immovable. Miss Torres, I never endorsed Italygate or any conspiracy. I asked questions as any attorney would when something doesn't sit right. But within the Bureau, we don't chase shadows, we pursue facts. If there's no evidence, we don't proceed. That's the principle I follow. A wave of applause swelled again, stronger this time, with a few cheers breaking free. Someone in the gallery called out, "Let him speak." Karen Wilna couldn't stay quiet, her voice dripping with disdain. You talk a good game, but you made the choice to stand on stages next to people who brand the FBI a threat. Now you run it. That's not leadership, it's hypocrisy. Patel turned toward her, his voice unwavering. Miss Monroe, I don't attend events to earn favor. I go to understand. If the FBI wants to protect the public, we must first listen, especially when what we hear is uncomfortable. I'm not here to appease. I'm here to act with integrity. Alyssa Farrah Griffin spoke next, her voice careful, measured. Cash, I understand the value of listening. But even a distant tie to groups like QAnon damages the Bureau's credibility. What steps will you take to prove you're free from their influence? Patel's gaze locked with hers. His voice dropped, each word landing with deliberate force. Miss Griffin, trust isn't built on distancing, it's built on action. Under my leadership, the FBI will pursue every credible threat, no matter where it originates. That includes any movement, left, right, or fringe. I serve no individual, no faction. Only the law and the people of this country. The room erupted. Applause thundered like a rising tide. Dozens rose to their feet and someone near the back cried out, "That's leadership." Jessica Alpha leaned forward, trying to bring order back. Cash, you speak of law, but your past associations with extremist circles still make many Americans uneasy. Doesn't that blur the line between justice and politics? Patel turned to her, voice cold, clean, and exact. Miss Grant, politicization happens when emotions override principle. I don't choose sides, I uphold the law. Listening to all voices, even the controversial ones, isn't weakness. It's a necessity. National security doesn't serve parties. It demands impartiality and truth. The audience roared once more. The control room buzzed in alarm, someone muttered, cut it, but the director remained transfixed, eyes locked on the screen. The studio was electric. And in its eye, unmoved, sat Cash Patel. As the applause finally softened, an echo lingered like smoke. Patel didn't move. His gaze swept the host's table, not with defiance, but readiness. As if daring the next challenge to come. Marissa, regaining her footing, crossed her arms and leaned forward. Her voice was steady but sharp, honed like a scalpel. Mr. Patel, you keep calling for accountability. But let's talk about your own words. You once called for the FBI headquarters to be shut down and spoke of purging what you termed the deep state. That doesn't sound like reform. That sounds like revenge. Silence settled in the room, not of awe but of anticipation. This was the inflection point. Everyone knew it. Patel leaned toward the mic, his hands calmly folded. His voice was not raised, but each syllable struck like a bell. Miss Torres, this isn't vengeance. It's responsibility. When an institution entrusted with extraordinary power begins to show signs of politicization, failing to act becomes complicity. Closing the headquarters isn't about destruction, it's a statement. A declaration that the old machinery of bias and secrecy has no place in a new era. You can't rebuild a house by painting over mold. There was a pause. Then applause, slower this time, but firm. Every clap like a stake driven into the moment. Marissa pressed again, her tone harder. A statement? Sounds like you want to dismantle the agency. And purging the deep state, isn't that just code for firing anyone who challenges Trump? Patel's expression didn't shift. His reply was crisp, unwavering. Miss Torres, the deep state isn't a roster of names, it's a culture of entrenched power used for political leverage. Reform means rooting that out. Not by partisan litmus tests, but by holding everyone, accountable to the same legal standard. If an agent's committed no wrongdoing, I need them. If they have, they will be gone. The audience stirred again. Some clapped. Others murmured in approval. The spell of certainty hung thick in the air, challenging the very foundation of the show's usual rhythm. Karen Wilna, her voice sharp with disbelief, struck next. You talk about rebuilding trust, yet you once called FBI agents gangsters for doing their jobs. That doesn't sound like reform, Cash. It sounds like sabotage. Patel turned toward her, composed as ever. Miss Monroe, I call abuse what it is, no matter who commits it. If an FBI official uses power to pursue someone, Trump or any citizen, without lawful cause, that's not justice. That's corruption. Reform isn't about tearing down the bureau, it's about shielding it from misuse. The crowd responded with energy, applause erupting, stronger now, with more audience members rising to their feet. Lisa Gilcillian forward, her tone unwavering. But Mr. Patel, shuddering, the FBI's headquarters, a symbol of law and order, is extreme. Doesn't that destroy trust more than build it? Patel's gaze met hers, clear and firm. Miss Rivera, sometimes symbols need to fall so something better can rise. That building still bears J. Edgar Hoover's name, a man who misused the agency for decades. Moving the FBI isn't destruction, it's a declaration. We serve the people, not history. Trust comes not from walls, but from truth in action. Alyssa Farrah Griffin remained calm, though her expression hinted at unease. She leaned in, her tone refined but cutting. Cash, I see your urgency for change. But sweeping reform can't be imposed, it requires unity. How will you win over those who think you're politicizing the Bureau? Patel met her challenge without hesitation, voice quiet but weighty. Miss Griffin, consensus doesn't begin with comfort, it begins with clarity. I won't buy trust with flattery. I'll earn it through open processes, lawful action, and independent oversight. People don't need to like me. They need to believe the FBI stands for the law and nothing else. The audience clapped again, more fervent now. Cheers rose from different corners of the room. Keep going, Cash, someone shouted. The balance had shifted. The hosts could feel it. Jessica Alpha, seasoned and sharp, stepped in to steer the wheel. Mr. Patel, you speak of transparency, but you've publicly accused the FBI of bias before. How do we know your reform agenda isn't revenge in disguise? Patel turned, his expression cool and certain. His words rang out with force, each one deliberate. Miss Grant, revenge has no place in justice. I hold no grudge. I want an FBI that serves Americans equally, even those who doubt me. Any investigation under my leadership will come with one requirement: evidence. Not feelings. Not vendettas. The crowd responded like thunder, applause, whistles, the scrape of chairs as people stood again. Someone from the middle rows called out, "You're doing the right thing." Sarah Davin, not ready to yield the moment, leaned in, urgency in her voice. If that's true, how will you deal with agents who resist your reforms? Fire them for not falling in line. Patel didn't blink. The answer was ready. I don't need agreement. I need integrity. If an agent disagrees with me but obeys the law and works with honor, they're essential. But if they lie, hide the truth, or exploit their badge for politics, they're out. That's not command. That's accountability. The room burst into full applause again, no longer cautious or split, but united. More stood. Some raised fists. The moment had arrived and the control room could feel it. Cut the feed, one producer whispered. But the director simply stared at the monitor. This wasn't theater. It was a reckoning. Marissa, seizing what felt like the last card in the deck, struck hard. Mr. Patel, let's cut to the core. You've talked about prosecuting journalists, loyalty to Trump, QAnon events, tearing down the Bureau. All of it leads to one question. How can Americans trust you're not just Trump's hammer, using the FBI to crush opponents? Patel leaned in, his gaze fixed and voice low, each word etched in stone. Miss Torres, when media or officials crown themselves the sole guardians of truth, they rob the people of theirs. The line landed like thunder. The studio erupted. Applause rolled like a wave. Someone in the back yelled, "Say it again, Cash." Unshaken, Patel continued, his tone powerful yet composed. I serve no man. Not Trump. Not any politician. I protect the right of every American to live in a country where truth isn't bent by fear or power. Want justice? Start by listening without condemning first. Cheers exploded across the room. The production crew's instructions were drowned beneath it. Amelia tried to seize the reins again, urgency creeping into her voice. Cash, you say you protect voices. But when you threaten media and overhaul law enforcement, that sounds like dominance, not defense. Don't you see that? Patel turned to her, his voice clear as a bell. Miss Grant, dominance silences dissent. I want people to speak as long as they speak honestly. Under my leadership, the FBI won't chase opinions. It will pursue unlawful acts. That's the line. And it couldn't be clearer. Applause again. Deafening. It refused to fade. Then came Karen Wilma's voice, high, sharp, quivering with frustration. You sound righteous, but you once labeled Trump's critics enemies. That's not unity, that's division. Patel turned slowly. No anger. No hesitation. Miss Monroe, enemies aren't those who disagree. They're those who twist power to suppress the truth and corrupt public trust. I'm not dividing anyone. I'm naming what already exists. And if that reality offends someone, that says more about them than me. The room ignited. Applause. Shouts. Chairs scraping as many stood. An audience member yelled, "Keep going, Cash." Sandra Bulactree to shift the tide, her voice sharp and swift as a slashing knife. "Mr. Patel, you say you pursue truth, but you've spread conspiracies from Italygate to deep state talk. How can the public trust your FBI won't keep pushing those?" Patel didn't blink. He looked straight at Anna, each word striking like a hammer on steel. "Miss Navarro, my FBI won't chase rumors. We chase evidence. I ask questions because that's a lawyer's job. But as FBI leader, there's one rule: truth. And truth doesn't need embellishment." The audience responded like a tidal wave. Raucous applause. Many standing. Hands raised high as if at a campaign rally. Alyssa Farrah Griffin tried to reclaim space, her voice neutral but firm. "Cash, I believe you pursue truth. But your words like purge, prosecute, make people fear you're targeting anyone not in Trump's camp. What will you do to ease that fear?" Patel nodded slightly as if he'd long awaited this question. His voice was low, but its weight silenced the room. "I'm not here to reassure everyone. I'm here to do right. Every reform decision will be public. Every investigation based on evidence. And all under public scrutiny. Anyone thinking I'm targeting them for politics? Look at the record. It'll speak the truth for me." The applause was like thunder. Nearly the entire audience stood. Many whistling. Some shouting, "Cash! Cash!" Sunny Hostin, with no options left, threw a final blow, her voice urgent as if trying to hold the stage. "So do you admit that your approach from QAnon to FBI reform has helped erode trust in the agency?" Patel looked at her without blinking. His response was sharp, as if honed by reason and experience. "Miss Hostin, trust doesn't crumble from questions, it crumbles from hidden lies. I don't divide, I confront the truth. And if the truth makes someone uncomfortable, they should ask themselves, are they afraid of the truth or of losing power?" This time, there was no doubt. The studio erupted. The audience roared, clapped, called his name. At the host's table, the faces of the panel had changed, no longer aggressors, but people struggling to keep control of their own narrative. Whoopi smoothed her hair. Sunny bit her lip harder. Joy tossed her notes on the table. While Anna and Alyssa whispered tensely, they thought Sunny's final question would topple Patel. But he didn't just stand firm, he turned it into a crescendo with the audience behind him. The studio, engulfed in emotional chaos, felt electric. Patel's words were like a flame, spreading through the room, searing into the audience's minds. It wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a call. A challenge to the system. And the audience felt its weight. They didn't clap because they fully agreed, they clapped for the sincerity. For someone daring to stand up, face the entire studio, and say what they thought but didn't dare voice. Patel sat there, no smile, no victorious expression. Just a calm gaze, as if he'd simply done what needed doing. The producer in the control room signaled to wrap, but no one noticed. The audience kept clapping, unwilling to leave. An assistant whispered through the earpiece, "We've lost the narrative." The director nodded, eyes dazed. They planned to make Patel the loser. But he didn't just hold his ground, he made the view his stage. Whoopi took a deep breath, trying to restore a professional air. She flashed a slight smile, but her eyes never left Patel. "We want to thank Mr. Cash Patel for joining us today. It seems we've had a conversation beyond expectations." Joy Behar, no longer smirking, gave a slight nod. Daniel Liberalian back in her chair, her gaze quiet. And Sandra Bullock and Alyssa Farrah Griffin stayed silent, offering only nods as if finally acknowledging this was no ordinary exchange. Patel stood, nodding his thanks to the panel. He didn't need to say more. His silence, in a room just filled with noise, carried more weight than any words. The applause rose again. This time, not for debate, but for closure, a closure no one on the Views team anticipated and certainly no one could control. The cameras pulled back. As the show's theme music played, on the screen, text appeared, "The View will return next week." But in the hearts of the audience, both in the studio and the millions watching through screens, one line still echoed. If the truth makes someone uncomfortable, they should ask themselves, are they afraid of the truth or of losing power? And in that moment, one thing crystallized. Supporter or critic, no one doubted, Cash Patel didn't come to The View for an interview. He came to change the game. The studio gradually quieted, but the energy lingered, a reminder that one person with sincerity and courage can shift the entire game. Patel didn't just leave. He left the studio in chaos. An audience electrified. And a message indelible. The view's auditorium slowly hushed as the lights dimmed. But the aftershock of Kash Patel's performance rippled like an undercurrent. His line, "When media and officials crown themselves arbiters of justice, they steal the people's voice," didn't just shake the studio. It exploded outward, seeping through phone screens and social media. As the show ended, the audience left their seats. But the story didn't stop. It was just beginning. Within mere hours, the digital sphere erupted. The hashtag Kash on Morning Horizon rocketed to the top of trending charts. Clip after clip surged across platforms, particularly one, Patel delivering his piercing line as the crowd rose to its feet. By nightfall, millions had watched. And millions more had something to say. Emotions flooded the feed. One user wrote, "I'm no Trump fan, but Patel's right, media isn't above accountability." Another fired back, "He's dangerous. All charm, no conscience. Cloaking control in eloquence." Divisive? Absolutely. But no one could deny the magnetism of the moment. Discussion boards lit up like signal fires. On social media, supporters crowned Patel a truth-teller taking aim at a complacent press. Detractors cast him as a charismatic populist cloaking partisanship in reform. Yet even critics conceded he didn't just appear on Morning Horizon. He claimed it. Host by host, he turned the panel into reluctant witnesses to a performance they could no longer steer. The media joined the fray with urgency. Articles poured in, some dissecting every word, others scrutinizing every flicker of Patel's expression, every darting glance from the hosts. One explosive headline read, "Patel seizes Morning Horizon. Audience rallies behind him." Another, from a more wary outlet, "FBI director delivers chilling rhetoric masked in poise." But whether lauded or condemned, all agreed Patel had triggered something bigger than himself. A national debate about media, power, and who holds the moral compass in modern democracy. Back at the studio, the aftermath was hushed but seismic. The show's official account posted a single, clipped message. "Thank you to Kash Patel for today's important conversation." But the post drowned beneath a tidal wave of replies, supporters hailing Patel, critics berating the hosts for losing command of their own platform. Behind the scenes, tensions simmered. One insider reported Joy Behar left in a storm, muttering to her assistant, "Too slick for his own good." Sonny Torres declined all interview requests, lips sealed. And Jessica Alpha, veteran of the spotlight, was overheard confessing to a colleague, "We underestimated him." Patel, in stark contrast to the noise, vanished into the background. No press tour. No victory lap. No tweets. He returned to his role, quiet, steady, letting the dust settle behind him. And oddly, it was that silence that spoke loudest of all. His absence became an echo chamber. Not of arrogance, but of discipline. A reminder that sometimes power lies not in repetition, but in restraint. It hadn't just been a viral moment, it was a cultural tremor. Proof that amid the chaos of shouting voices and partisan spin, one person could still walk into the storm and be heard. Not by drowning others out, but by choosing words carefully, saying little, and meaning every syllable. His message didn't resolve the country's fractures. It didn't erase doubt or unify every camp. But it cracked a window. To discourse. To scrutiny. To the idea that truth can still stand even in hostile rooms. Even against hostile odds. When the studio lights dimmed and the credits rolled, Patel's presence lingered, not as a flawless hero, but as someone who stood, unwavering, and said what many were afraid to say aloud. And in that 1 hour, on that one stage, he reminded a nation. A single, honest voice, when spoken with courage, can shake the system.